right. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Today I'm going to do something slightly unorthodox. I'm going to use someone else's content as the basis for this episode. And what I mean by that is rather than seeing something and then saying, okay, here's this thing that I saw. Let me give you my interpretation. Let me give you my perspective. What I'm basically going to do is read their stuff because it was relatively lengthy. And then I'm going to, along the way, provide receipts. So I'm kind of just adding to what this person already said. So the user in question here is a guy I follow on Twitter. His name is Dylan Allman, and he made a very lengthy post, at least for Twitter's purposes. It's a lengthy post about why he will not vote for Donald Trump. And I thought it was great. Like it was a fabulous, roughly 1,500 words. And he makes a lot of claims about Donald Trump as far as like, hey, this is why I'm not voting for him. And so I thought, well, what would be better than to read through this and then provide receipts just in case people were like, well, did Trump really do that? Or is that really true? Well, we can go and see. And then you can look up for yourselves. And then, more importantly, for those who are in the audience who will not be voting for Trump, when your friends cajole you for not voting for him, you can remind him. You can say, well, didn't you once upon a time complain about this? Or isn't this a bit of a concern for you? Or what do you think about when Donald Trump did this as president? Right. So this is what you can utilize to rebut against them. And so, hopefully I'm giving credit where due. I didn't do any of this work. The only thing that I did was I grabbed the receipts. I just read through it and I said, all right, let's go look. Let's go see if this is true. And then I'm providing you, the viewer and listener, receipts. So for those who are listening to this later, because I am now making a point to get this to audio only. So, if you're on Spotify or you're on iTunes, you'll be able to listen to this. So for those who cannot see the screen, or maybe you've got YouTube on the back in the background, I will read through the receipts, well enough so that you know. And then if for whatever reason you need to reference them, you can go and do these. You can go and pull this information up. Stuff will all the links that are necessary will be in the show notes. So let's go on and let's get this up. So I'm going to pull this up here, and again, I'm just going to really just going to like go through and read through it. That's literally what I'm going to do. But I've got receipts coming your way. So here it is. Here's what we've got. So this is Dylan Allman here, and let's see here. Let's do some things here. There we go. Okay, so this is Dylan Allman, and as you can see, and I'm going to scroll down really quickly just so you can see the sheer length of this. So as we're going and going and going and going, and then he's got a picture at the end, which I stole. Yes, I did because I was running behind this morning. I meant to use a different graphic at least, but alas, I was running out of time. I was already behind, so whatever. Just come at me, I guess, if you have to. All right, so let's read through this. And why do I still have that double logo up there? So let me see what we can do to resolve that. There, fix that. All right, so let's read through this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it on my side, and then I will scroll down as we are going along. So let me see. Let me try to do something. Let me move some windows around a little bit so that I can see. Did that did not help. So let's there we go. Okay, I think this will work. So I'm gonna let's see. Yeah, give me a second. I've got some notes here. So I think this will work. Yeah, perfect. There we are. All right. So he starts off and he says, I can't in good conscience or even in acceptable conscience, vote for Donald Trump this November, regardless of how terrible his opponent is. Now, let me. I'm not going to stop every sentence and talk about it, but I will say I really appreciate this idea of separating out and saying good conscience or even an acceptable conscience, because this kind of tells us right away, like, people like to argue and say, well, you know, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough, right? And like, he's good enough. No, like even good enough isn't sufficient here. And then he goes and explains. So let's go on. He's not just disqualified, he's a living embodiment of everything wrong with American politics. His record is an indisputable disaster, littered with betrayals, lies, and a toxic brand of populism to drain. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Toxic brand of populism that has only deepened the very swamp he has promised to drain. And I've got a couple windows here, so bear with me as I navigate these. I wasn't fooled the first time, and now that he has been given the opportunity to show his true colors, I sure as hell won't be deceived. Now, Trump's failures are a fundamental betrayal of every principle worth defending. Trump's entire brand is a fraud. He poses he poses as an anti-establishment outsider, but his administration was nothing more than a recycling bin for the very swamp creatures he vowed to expel. He surrounded himself with lobbyists, corporate insiders, and military industrial complex shills, from his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to his national security advisor, John Bolton. Trump's cabinet was a parade of the worst Washington had to offer. His interior secretary was an oil and gas lobbyist. His defense secretary was a Raytheon lobbyist. His EPA administrator was a coal lobbyist. His Health and Humans HHS secretary, Health and Human Services, was a pharmaceutical lobbyist, and his labor secretary was a lawyer for mega corporations. Well, let's take a look and see if any of that happens to be true. Because as it turns out, there you go. So there's and let's see here. Let's do sorry folks, I'm got a pile of windows that I'm looking at here. Okay. So here we go with David Bernhard, who happened to be the Secretary of Interior. And as you see, they're highlighted oil and energy industry lobbyist. Now, I get it. These pictures are coming from Wikipedia. I did this, I pulled from Wikipedia simply because it organizes the information in a way that's easy for me to put up and put together. Right. So, but there are other sources for this. You can go and in the show notes, you can see that, yes, he in fact was the Secretary of the Interior for Donald Trump. There's a link to like a White House government website that's an archive, and you can find other sources as well. So I don't want to hear anything about, oh, you're using Wikipedia. Like it's just it just made it easy for me to present this information. All right, let's move forward. So the next one, oops, that's not what we wanted. That's a different picture. What happened here? So let me see. Why are things moving in the wrong way? Oh, I see what happened. Okay. So do, give me just a second. So I got you. I see what happened here. All right. So goodness, we got this. So I got my pictures a little bit out of order, but we will get this taken care of. I think that's going to work. All right. So that should fix that. And so let's try one more thing. Love it when I don't do things correct. So we will cut to that. And okay, stop for a second here. All right. Why are you? Oh, so okay. And then okay. I think we're good. I think we're good. All right. So there's the Secretary of Interior. We'll get this under control here. All right. So then we have the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. You can see that he lobbied for defense contractor Raytheon as its vice president of government relations. So there's that claim stacks up. Oh, here's the EPA administrator, Andrew Wheeler. He, well, seeing my notes here, got the camera in the way. He previously worked um, in the law firm. I can't pronounce that, but Baker Daniels, representing coal magnate Robert E. Murray and lobbying against the Obama administration's environmental regulations. Okay. So that claim stacks up. What do we got here? We got Alex Michael Azar, businessman, lobbyist, and former pharmaceutical executive who served as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So that claim stacks up. And then I believe this is the last one, Eugene Scalia, which is the son of Antonin Scalia, by the way. But during his career in private practice, Scalia defended corporations such as Boeing and Walmart. Not necessarily a bad thing, but if we're talking about draining the swamp and getting some of this stuff, these people out of there and focusing on the American people, then we're not off to a good start. And then, okay, so that's a different picture. We'll set that to the side. All right, so we'll go back now and we'll continue reading. So this claim here about the various people that were in his cabinet and their lobbying efforts stacks up. That is, in fact, true. So let's continue on and we'll continue reading. So let's see here. All right. So not to mention him effectively handing the keys to the country over to Anthony Fauci. This isn't draining the swamp, it's expanding it. And anyone who believes otherwise is deluding themselves. Trump didn't start any new wars? Fine. But what an astronomically low bar. It's laughable. What he did do was escalate drone strikes by 432%, turning the Middle East and beyond into a kill zone. Innocent lives were lost, and all under the radar of the American public. Trump armed Trump armed Saudi Arabia to the teeth, directly fueling their genocidal war in Yemen. And when Congress, in a rare moment of conscience, tried to stop him, Trump vetoed the bill. Okay, well, let's see here, and then let's go get that back up there. So, where did it go here? There we go. All right, so he vetoed the bill. So let's go and see if that claim stacks up about Saudi Arabia, Yemen, so on and so forth. Well, as it turns out, let's see here, man. There's way too. I always underestimate exactly how difficult this is to do all of this. And so I'm always like, oh, I'll be able to do this so easily. All right, so here we go. So here are some articles from back in 2020. No, is that the right one? Uh, who did this? Let's see here. That's what we wanted. So we want that to be, how about, all right, I think that'll work. No, maybe not. We will just do this. I got it. I got you. I got this, folks. Technology is not working for me today, but we're going to make it through anyway. So we'll go back here. And can I go? Yep. Dope. Oh my goodness. Why are you being so difficult? That is not the one that I wanted. We will just cycle through them until I find the one that I am trying that I'm looking for. I don't know why it's not showing up in my little list here. That is so weird. Why are you doing that? Um do. And I thought I was being clever this morning. So we will do it a different way. We will do this. Bear with me, folks, as I get this figured out, and we will put this up on the screen. So let's see. Goodness. All right. So we will get this posted just a moment here. So bear with me. I wish I had some elevator music to use, but alas, I do not. So we're just going to have to go with it. All right. So we're going to put this one up on the screen. So there we go. And then boop. And then just right about there seems pretty decent. Move you around there. All right. There. How about that? And we'll move it down right there. All right. Trump vetoes congressional resolution to end Yemen war. This is from antiwar.com. So if you're an anti-war libertarian, this should appeal to you, right? You should be remembering this. You should have not forgotten that he vetoed it. And if you're looking for the specific bill that he vetoed, well, as it turns out, I have that too. So let me pull that up because that was Senate Joint Resolution number 7. And we can take a look and see that's right here. Joint resolution to direct the removal of United States armed forces from hostilities in the Republic of Yemen that have not been authorized by Congress. And we can see here it says failed to pass over veto. So it was vetoed by the president. This went through the House, it went through the Senate, it came to President Trump's desk, and he vetoed it. And if you look up the information, you'll find out that it barely passed the House and the Senate. And so he was good on a veto to not worry about being overridden. So we also had some spineless cowards in Congress as well. So anyway, let's get back to our images that are all jacked up, and that's okay. We will do what we can. So let's see here. Actually, you know what? I take it back. I think we've proven this point here. Let's go back to let's go back to reading what Mr. Allman had to say and see if we can't be a little bit more smooth in for the rest of this. Okay, perfect. So there we are. So that and that. All right, perfect. So let's continue on. See, Trump continued America's endless cycle of violence in the Middle East, launching missile strikes in Syria. Oh, do we have any pictures of those missile strikes in Syria? Well, as it turns out, we do. So let me pull that up and then you can take a peek at that as well. So doop, doop, bam. So there we are. It's a little out of the sorts here. Move it over. Trump orders missile attack in retaliation for Syrian chemical strikes. What does this article remind us about? What happened was the trying to remember his name. I've forgotten his name, but the Syrian president, dictator, whatever you want to call him, he released chemical attacks on his own people, and then the U.S. ordered a missile strike on that compound. So that's what happened. This is from the U.S. Department of Defense. This is like a government archive site. So we attacked another country for what they did to their own people. They didn't attack us, right? So this is the problem. And I get it. I understand, folks. You're out there and you're like, hey, but the chemical, if we're going to be libertarians and we're going to keep our nose out of other people's issues, that means we do not send missile attacks for any reason other than self-defense. And I would argue, which is part of a larger conversation, that much of our involvement makes things worse. So if you're like, well, we're just trying to, help people, we're probably not helping them long term. In the short term, you might do something, maybe, but the long term, you're creating and continuing destabilization of these areas. All right, so let's continue on and let's see what else Mr. Allman had to say. All right. Oh boy, there are too many windows here, but we're going to get through this, folks. Don't you worry. All right. So let's see. Trump's reckless assassination. There we go. Assassination of Iranian General Soleimani didn't just escalate tensions with Iran. It brought us to the brink of a full-scale war. It was an unnecessary and dangerous provocation, one that could have spiraled into global catastrophe. General Soleimani was killed in a drone strike January 3rd, 2020. So let's take a look really quickly at what the media had to say during that time. So, and I believe this is where the next images are going to pop up at. So let's see here. There we go. All right. So here are some of the articles that were around that same time frame. The goofy fantasy of anti-war Trump. That's from The Week, Al Jazeera, U.S.-Iran tensions. What war powers does Trump have? AP News, Trump aim of killing Iranian general was to, quote, stop a war. And then PBS over here, watch Biden says Iran escalation shows Trump incapable of world leadership. And then there's a few more articles here. Trump's reckless Middle East policy has brought the U.S. to the brink of war. That's from the Brookings Institute, NPR. House votes no war against Iran in rebuke to Trump. Human Rights Watch, U.S. Trump threatens war crimes against Iran. This is all January of 2020. And then Vox over here, for whatever that's worth, Trump's Iran war has begun. All of these articles in 2020. So as it turns out, it wasn't so good on Iran either, or at least that was the vibe then. All right, continuing on here. All right, let's see what else we can come up with here. So Trump's attempt to orchestrate a coup, oops, a little too much there, in Venezuela was a classic case of American imperialism meddling in another sovereign nation's affairs with no regard for the consequences, all while cloaking it in the language of democracy and freedom. Let's see. I think we have something for that as well. So let's pull up my images here and we will see what we can find. But as it turns out, here we go. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I might be able to do it this way. Let me see. Is it pop? Oh, perfect. Look at that. There we go. Trump, this is from the New York Times, somewhat reputable. Trump administration discussed coup plans with rebel Venezuelan officers. All right. So the charges that he orchestrated, right? Like that he participated in some way. And so here we have news from the time talking about it. And I clipped out the timestamp, the date stamp on this, but you can go and look up this article if you would like. So continuing on, what else does Mr. Allman say that suggests that Trump is simply just no good? So Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear agreement wasn't just foolish, it was reckless. He pushed us closer to potential nuclear confrontation, all in the name of undoing Obama's legacy, regardless of the fallout. Trump's criticism of Biden for not being aggressive enough in supporting Israel's destruction of Gaza reveals a man who is perfectly comfortable with more bloodshed. Despite all this, his bluster about pulling out of conflicts, he kept America's war machine humming along, just fine. This is not the mark of a peace-seeking leader, but a man willing to wage war by remote control with no oversight and no accountability. All right, continuing on. Trump had every opportunity to roll back the surveillance state's reach, but instead he doubled down. He renewed the Patriot Act and FISA without a second thought, ensuring that Americans remain under the watchful eye of Big Brother. So let's take a look and let's evaluate that claim about the Patriot Act and FISA. Now, what I'm about to show you here comes from Grok. If you're not familiar with Grok, that is the AI for Twitter or X, if as you probably now know it by and call it by, right? We all call it X now. All right, so here, and all I did was I just simply asked Grok, to give me an answer. Let me zoom in a little bit so that's a little bit bigger, and you can read it. Did Donald Trump renew the Patriot Act? Right? Because I looked it up to find some receipts, and the problem was like the news articles were there, but the headlines weren't quite as clear. And so, because the headlines weren't quite as clear, it was a matter of like, okay, do I just read a whole bunch of different articles? And I thought, okay, why don't I just ask Grok, and Grok can put it into a nice, simple format. And it did. Donald Trump did not renew the Patriot Act in its entirety, but certain provisions related to surveillance under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, which are often associated with the Patriot Act, have been subject to renewal discussions during and after his presidency. So, and I'm not going to read it all, but FISA Section 702, that allowed for the surveillance of foreigners outside the United States, but has implication for American citizens' data. Patriot Act provisions. Three specific provisions of the Patriot Act did expire in March 2020 without being reauthorized. However, these were not the entirety of the act, just specific parts related to surveillance techniques like roving wiretaps, the Lone Wolf Amendment, and business records collection. And then let's see here. Okay, that just gives some context. So, given this context, Trump did not renew the Patriot Act as a whole, but related surveillance powers under FISA were reauthorized during his term. The complexity arises because these surveillance laws and their provisions are often lumped together in public discourse under the umbrella of the Patriot Act, even when they are technically separate or extensions of different legislation like FISA. Public and political discussion on platforms like X reflects confusion or conflation of these details, with some users pointing out the reauthorization of surveillance powers, while others focus on the expiration of specific Patriot Act provisions. So when you talk to people and you say, hey, he renewed the Patriot Act, and your friends go, no, he didn't, you can say, okay, well, he didn't renew the Patriot Act as a whole, but what he did do was to renew parts of it related to Pfizer. So we'll just go with somewhere in the middle on that particular claim from Mr. Allman. But again, he re-upped FISA. So if that's important to you, then keep that in mind when your friends are coming after you and saying, man, you got to vote for Trump. All right. So let's continue on here because there is still more to go and we are not done yet. So, and there we go. All right. So one more thing here. Let's go back to this. And why are you? Oh, there we go. That'll work. All right. So there we go. Now we're back to Mr. Allman, and we're going to see what else he has to tell us. All right. So his administration did nothing. Let me see here where we make sure I get that all. Oh, there we go. There we go. His administration did nothing to dismantle the NSA's mass data collection programs, keeping the deep state's grip on our personal freedoms as tight as ever. Let's see. I think we have an image that we can show there as well, just to make sure that, let's see here. What image are we looking for? Yes, that would be the image right there. All right, Trump administration is hiding a crucial report on NSA spying practices. This comes from the American Civil Liberties Union. From Reuters, Trump signs bill renewing NSA's internet surveillance programs. Ah, interesting that. So turns out that claim true in its entirety. All right, moving right along, Trump's betrayal of Julian Assange and Edward Snowden is unforgivable. These men exposed the crimes and corruption of the deep state only to be abandoned by a president who claimed to be on the side of truth and transparency. So he did not pardon either one of them. And now he's claiming that he's going to pardon Ross Ulbricht. He could have pardoned Ross Ulbricht as well, but he chose not to. So that's three people, I mean. All right, Trump could have pardoned them, but instead he left them to the wolves, showing that when it comes to challenging the surveillance state, he's all talk and no action. Moving right along, Trump's so-called defense of free speech is one of the greatest cons of his presidency. He has repeatedly called for jailing journalists who report unflattering truths, sued media outlets for negative coverage, and proposed jailing flag burners and deporting pro-Palestine protesters. So let's take a look. Let's evaluate a couple claims here. We're just going to evaluate one. So here is Trump on flags. Maybe. There it is. Oh, goodness. Every imaginable issue today. Lovely. All right. I think we can get through this, though. We're going to roll it back.
And we ought to do something, Mr. Senators. We have two great senators. We ought to come up with legislation that if you burn the American flag, you go to jail for 1 year. 1 year.
Wow. The sound of that audience. They're excited about that. All right. Maybe that was just a one-off. Maybe it was a one-off. Well, the audio issue was not a one-off, obviously. So let's get that taken care of. And we'll see if
you burn our American flag, you should get immediately mandatory 1 year in jail.
Sounds serious. All right. So as we can see, he indeed does want to jail flag burners. Now I get it. I'm service member. I'm not a big fan of flag burning. But if it's your property, it is your property. You can do what you want with it. And if you want to display the burning of the flag as some sort of, way of communicating ideas to other people, well, that's fine. So be it. So long as it's yours. We should not be. When I went to Bosnia, and I came back. Um, even despite that, I want people to have the right to burn the flag. Now, if by doing so they damage somebody else's property or they're threatening somebody, chasing somebody around with the burning flag or something crazy like that, then yes, we can punish them because those are actual crimes. But burning something is not a crime. All right, let's continue on. Let's see what else Mr. Allman has to say about good old Trump and why we should or should not support him. So let's see here. Trump raged against big tech censorship, but his actions never matched his words. He failed to rein in the power of Silicon Valley giants like Facebook and Twitter, who continue to manipulate public discourse with impunity. Mind you, that 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 both of them have come out and acknowledged that of government interference. Both of them did. Twitter had the Twitter files, and then we recently saw where Mark Zuckerberg came out and he apologized through a letter. So we know that they were actually meddling in and on behalf of government. All right, Trump isn't some great defender of free expression. Oh, let me go back. His complaints about social media bias are nothing more than self-serving whining from a man who can't stand criticism. Trump isn't some great defender of free expression. It's clear that he is more interested in crushing dissent than protecting the First Amendment. Far from, let me see here. Let's get that. Oh, there we go. Far from being a triumph, Trump's Operation Warp Speed was a rushed, reckless endeavor that prioritized big pharma profits over public safety. The vaccine rollout was chaotic, poorly managed, and the long-term consequences remain unknown. This wasn't about protecting Americans. It was about scoring political points and enriching the pharmaceutical industry. Trump's initial support for lockdowns led to the greatest wealth transfer in modern history. Crushing small businesses while enriching the mega corporations he claimed to oppose. All right, at this time, I want to collect myself and go to a quick intermission here, really, really quickly. So we will be right back and we'll continue reading through Mr. Allman's critique of Trump's history. Every single one of them.
Parties. They will become a heck of a lot more people are waking up to the fact that the two-party system is really a one-party system in this country. I guarantee you, when you make it hurt for the Democratic and Republican parties, they will become a heck of a lot more responsive to the needs of you, the voters, and not the people who back them. They're corporate lobbyist partners who buy and trade congressmen like cattle at an auction yard. Compare my platform to that of Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, and you will see that the Libertarian Party platform is the one that will grow prosperity, that will increase your freedom and your ability to live your life and raise your family as you see fit. A vote for me, what it is to vote to build up a Libertarian Party that can actually rise up to challenge these two parties, to put these ideas forward to the American people. And this is what will break the back of a duopoly of engaging in political pro wrestling, where they're not really fighting each other, but they're putting on a performance. You're not going to get anything meaningfully different from what the two-party system has provided you your entire life. Lesser of two evil is still evil. Chase your dreams. Empower yourselves. I'm Chase Oliver, a candidate for president, and I approve this message.
All right. So we're back. I'm still probably going to be struggling. I'll be on the struggle bus this episode because apparently I didn't get everything just right. So I apologize for that, folks, but I appreciate you bearing with me because the content here, the information is still solid, even if my technical skills are dropping today. So we will get through it. Have no worry. All right, let's continue on. So now we're going to take a look back and we're going to see what else Mr. Allman has to say. So we're about halfway through. All right, so let's continue on. Where are we here? The economic devastation wrought by these policies will haunt future generations, and Trump bears a significant share of the blame. In response to economic fallout, Trump turned on the money printer, devaluing the dollar, adding more to the national debt than any president in history, and setting the stage for the inflationary crisis we're living through now. Well, let's see if that claim stacks up as well. So let's take a look. All right, and I believe this is yep, there we go. Trump told Gary Cohn to print money to lower the national debt, according to Bob Woodward's book. This is from CNBC, from Forbes. Donald Trump and the Fed are destroying the U.S. dollar. From The Hill, Trump's plan to help eliminate the federal debt was to print money. Woodward book. So same reference. Quartz, Trump wanted to print money to repay the national debt. That's bananas. And I believe that's the only one. Do we have any more? Oh, nope, that's something else. Okay, so we'll save that for just a moment. All right, so let's go back. So looks like those claims stack up. There are receipts for that. Let's continue on and see what else Mr. Allman had to say here. The reckless money, there we go. The reckless monetary policy was nothing more than a short-term fix that ignored the long-term consequences, leaving future generations to pay the price. Trump's choice of J.D. Vance as his VP is a chilling sign of things to come. Vance, a Silicon Valley puppet with deep ties to Peter Thiel, represents the fusion of big tech and Big Brother, a surveillance state nightmare that should terrify anyone who values freedom. Freedom and privacy. Probably apologies for that. I'm trying to look at a couple different screens here. Thiel's influence from Palantir to Anduril has already entrenched the surveillance state in ways we can barely comprehend. Vance, a man who once compared Trump to Hitler, is now firmly in his camp, a testament to the corrosive power of money and influence in American politics. All right, continuing on here. Thiel's vision for America is one of omnipresent surveillance, where every action is monitored, every dissent suppressed, and every movement tracked. His company's technologies are already being used by law enforcement and the military, creating a panopticon where privacy is a relic of the past. So let's evaluate and see if that claim holds up as well. And let's see. There we are, how Peter Thiel's Palantir helped the NSA spy on the whole world. That's from The Intercept from New York Magazine. Palantir, big data's scariest, most secretive unicorn, is going public, but is it the crystal ball just smoke and mirrors? From the Next Web study, Trump's paid Peter Thiel's Palantir. Trump's paid Peter. This is a tongue twister for me this morning. This is not a good morning for me to podcast. I don't even know. Trump's paid Peter Thiel Palantir $1.5 billion so far to build ICE's mass surveillance network. And then from Vox, everything you need to know about Palantir, the secretive company coming for all your data. Let's see. I think that was it. Nope, that was a different one. We will move on to the next thing that Mr. Allman had to say. So let's go back to that. And let's see here. All right. By aligning with Vance and Thiel, Trump is signaling that his second term will be even more authoritarian, even more invasive, and even more destructive to our civil liberties. Trump, who presents himself as a staunch defender of the Second Amendment, was quick to turn his back on gun rights when it suited his agenda. After the Las Vegas shooting, Trump pushed for and successfully implemented a ban on bump stocks, a move that not only violated the Second Amendment, but set a dangerous precedent for further gun control measures. Continuing on here, and let's not forget his comments about taking guns away from people first and worrying about due process second, an outright authoritarian statement that should chill anyone who values their constitutional rights. Trump's willingness to flirt with gun control when it's politically convenient shows that his commitment to the Second Amendment is as flimsy as his other promises. All right, so let's take a look and see what Donald Trump had to say about guns. Well, as it turns out, that was the last one. Here we are. Trump administration officially bans bump stocks. Yep, he did that. That's from CNN, from AP News. Trump administration moves to ban bump stocks. New York Times. Trump administration imposes ban on bump stocks. That was published in 2018. NPR, Justice Department bans bump stocks devices used in the deadly Las Vegas shooting. And then we have some interesting videos here of him. So let's play this clip here. Hopefully it works. We'll see. Of course not, because, it's not my morning. So give me just a second here, and we'll get that audio back. I know what's going on. All right, so let's back that up.
President Trump stunned lawmakers on both sides of the aisle Wednesday with his overarching demands for gun control.
Like, take the firearms first and then go to court.
After Vice President Mike Pence suggested court procedures for removing guns from dangerous people, Trump caught him and many in the room off guard by seeming to dismiss due process.
Okay, did you hear that? He caught them off guard by dismissing due process. Like, everybody in the room was like, wait, what? Trump was like, you know what? Maybe we don't really need due process. We could just take the guns first. We'll figure it out after the fact. And they're like, whoa, wait. Like, everybody in the room, he startled them. They were like not prepared for this. He's talking like he is not a friend to the Second Amendment.
I like taking the guns early. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process second.
All right. So There it is. He wants to skip due process. As Joe Noosh says, immediately put in jail first, then due process. That's basically what it amounts to. We're going to put people in jail, because where do you, if you take the guns, people are going to resist, right? So it's not like you're just going to somebody's house. I mean, you might go to somebody's house and say, hey, we want your guns, and they say, okay, here's my guns, and then they give you their guns, right? And so you still didn't get your due process. So that's the nice way that it could play out. However, keep in mind that is still wrong. You're still taking stuff from people without due process. The fact that they hand it over to you willingly just means they don't want to fight over it. But there might be some people who will say, no, you're not taking my guns. I haven't even been to court. You haven't arrested me. No, I'm not giving you my guns. And then what happens? Well, they could be arrested. They could be shot. Like any number of bad things could happen. And I appreciate you, that Liberty Lady. Content is greater than technical. Today, I hope that is definitely the case. All right, so let's continue on. So Trump is no friend to the Second Amendment. All right, let's continue on and see what else we can find here. Let's see. There we go. Trump's broken promises to fully declassify the JFK assassination files is one of the most glaring examples of his lack of transparency and willingness to protect the establishment he claims to fight. He initially promised to release all the files, only to backtrack and keep crucial documents hidden from public view. This isn't the behavior of a man committed to truth and transparency. It's the action of someone protecting powerful interest at the expense of the American people's right to know. All right, let's continue on. Let's move down a little bit here. One more. There we go. All right. He initially promised, if Trump can't be trusted to follow through on something as fundamental as transparency regarding the assassination of a president, who else, what else is he willing to hide? Trump supporters need to wake up to the fact that he is not the savior they believed him to be. He is a self-serving con man who has used the platform to enrich himself and his cronies while leaving his base to suffer the consequences. The idea that Trump is fighting for the little guy is a fantasy, a dangerous delusional fantasy that keeps millions trapped in a cycle of false hope and disappointment. That may be one of the best lines in his post. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people really believe, even libertarians. They're like, but he said he's going to do this, and they keep making excuses. Well, he didn't know what he was getting into. The deep state was a lot worse than he realized. That's not a me problem. That's a him problem. He should have understood what he was getting into. He should have had the resources ready, because if you go and say, I'm going to go fight, and then you line up your cabinet with people that don't align with that claim, and you do things that are misaligned, and then the few things that maybe you try to do, you weren't prepared to actually follow through on. Like, what is it that I'm supposed to take away and say, you know what? He does deserve a second term because he did so great the first one. No, he didn't, on purpose and out of negligence, apparently, or simply all on purpose. Like, if you're being generous, you can say some of it was on purpose and some of it was maybe he didn't realize what he was walking into. The deep state was bigger than he thought it was, right? Okay, fine. That means he wasn't prepared. If he wasn't prepared the first time, how is he going to be any more prepared this time? Right? People and critics don't give me that. They just make lazy excuses and arguments, and they say things like, well, you're just addicted to losing. Addicted to losing? No, you're just desperate. Anyway, let's continue. All right, so let's see here. Where are we here? The idea that Trump, okay, so here we are. Supporting Trump is not an act of rebellion, is an act of submission to the very forces that are tearing this country apart. Trump is not the answer to America's problems. He's the embodiment of them. To vote for him is to endorse the continued erosion of our liberties, the perpetuation of endless war, and the entrenchment of a surveillance state that watches our every move. I refuse to be complicit in this grand deception. Trump's record is all the proof I need that he is unfit for power. His promises are empty. His rhetoric is hollow, and his legacy is one of betrayal. We deserve better. America deserves better. I 100% agree. That's all of what Dylan Allman had to say. I'm going to link it. You can go read it for yourself. I'll have all the show notes, all the links to any specific articles in the show notes. You can go check that out. But I think he's 100% correct. And I hope you realize that no, Trump is not. He is not the guy that a lot of people like to claim that he is. Not when you go back and you look at his record. And so let me tell you, when your liberty loving friends give you a hard time about not voting for Trump, remind them of what they forgot. Everything is in here. And there's more. This is not it. In some cases, your friends passionately have argued against these very things. They'll say things like Chase Oliver, the libertarian candidate, cannot win. Okay. Well, that just shows that they are smitten with desperation to be seen as part of the winning team. They'll point to Chase, I don't know, holding a pride flag, wearing a mask during COVID, or even his lax position on gender affirming pharmaceuticals. Yet, they'll ignore Trump pandering to the gay community, his role in setting the stage for all that was evil during COVID, putting far less effort into even questioning Dr. Fauci than Senator Rand Paul did, or that Trump did absolutely nothing to reduce, address, or even acknowledge America's pharmaceutical problem. He did nothing. He did say that drug dealers should get the death penalty. So maybe libertarians can get behind that. At least some kids you don't know and have no vested interest in won't get puberty blockers or hormones, right? Oh, wait a minute, hold up. That was actually just more fodder for the drug war. The illegal, the drugs that they have determined to be illegal, not pharmaceuticals. So the only thing that he cares about is stopping, is perpetuating everything that we have. The best that we've gotten is he's come out in dissent of Ron DeSantis and said, yeah, this vote's going to pass on Amendment 3 here in Florida, but we need to make sure our cities don't smell like weed. So he's definitely for some more regulation there. Dylan is right. And anyone who cares about liberty ought to be reminded daily if necessary. So that's my show. Let's see. One more comment here. Joe Hanush says Trump wanted Massey to be kicked out of the Republican Party because he wanted a vote for the largest spending bill in history. I mean, we could probably spend hours going through his record and saying, this is what he actually did. Now, mind you, my libertarian peers will say things like, well, would you run a libertarian against Thomas Massey? My answer is maybe, depends on who the libertarian is. I mean, if they're a quality candidate and they could actually put up a challenge, then yes. I mean, would I run against Thomas Massey? No, because it would be a waste of resources and time and everything else. But that doesn't mean there's not a good libertarian candidate that could offer up a challenge and be somebody that, if nothing else, keeps Thomas Massey honest, which not very hard to do. He's a pretty good guy, actually, as far as Republicans go. If and I've said this before, if the House of Representatives were full of people like Thomas Massey, this country would be far better, far better. That doesn't make him libertarian, though, right? But again, go back to that. He wanted to vote. He wanted to vote for the largest spending bill in history. And what did Trump do? Trump tried to kick him out. And then libertarians will come and say, well, would you run a libertarian against Thomas Massey? Well, you're running Trump basically against him, in a sense. I mean, Trump tried to kick him out of the party and you're supporting him. But then you'll turn around and you'll tell me, well, would you run a libertarian against that? We're not even, and it's not even really on the table. That's just an argument for more Republicans. And to that point, I would say, look at their record. Their record is everything that people in the liberty sphere have been complaining about for years, decades in some cases. So if you support Trump, you wipe away all of those complaints that you once had. You make them null and void. You really do. And I would say you're kind of a hypocrite by supporting him now. I get it. The libertarians at the national level, they're not going to win, the likelihood, right? That doesn't mean that we don't get out there. We don't get our message out. That doesn't mean we stop getting out there, getting our message out and letting people know and working to hold their feet to the fire. And if more libertarians would actually support Chase Oliver, then we could mount a stronger force to ensure that whoever wins, we at least remind them of the record. And we remind we tell them, we let them know we're reminding you, Mr. and Mrs. Politician, of your record, and we're reminding the American voters. And we are going to do our best to hold your feet to the fire. That should be the libertarian position, but it should not be to support Trump because he's literally everything that we're against. All right, folks, that's my show for today. It's a rough one. We'll get past it. We'll get better in the future. We'll deliver these super flawlessly. But thank you for watching. Hope you found the episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. And make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com. You can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now,